You're listening to Let's Talk, episode 10. Howdy all and welcome. This is Father Cory Sticha and welcome to our rebooted Let's Talk podcast. We've taken this podcast that we've done a year or so ago and kind of let it drop. Well, we're getting it going again. It's a chance for us to talk to you about topics of interest that you might have, topics of interest that we have, bring guests on, have an opportunity to really just talk about topics of interest. Like I said, we got a couple of panelists and a guest this morning. First, we got Lynn Francisco from North Carolina. How you doing, Lynn?
I'm doing fine. So nice to be back.
It's great to have you back. For those of you who don't know, Lynn was our producer for Catholic Weekend for quite a few years. Now she's on the other side of the microphone, so to speak. It's great to see you.
Yeah, great to be seen by you.
Yeah. We also got Mac Baren from Georgia, deep
Hello.
in the South. How's it going, Mac?
Howdy. It's going very well, Father Cory. I knew I was going to see Lynn Francisco, so I remembered to wear some flowers in my hair. And I've had about 8 cups of coffee this morning. I'm not wearing any pants, and I'm ready to talk. Let's talk.
Oh, boy, this could be good. And then we also have our special guest is Devin Rose. How are you doing, Devin?
I'm good, and I am here in the Austin, Texas area. So we've got the East Coast, the South, and the Southwest.
And I'm up in Montana, so we got the Northwest covered as well. Well, nice. Devin, since you're the guest, why don't you introduce yourself and to our listeners?
Sure. My name's Devin Rose, and I converted to the Catholic faith, thanks be to God, about 18 years ago at St. Mary's in College Station, Texas. Was very grateful for then Father David Condrela and Father Mike Siss, now Bishops David Condrela of Tulsa and Bishop Mike Siss of San Angelo.
Wow.
And I grew up atheist, and so in college I came to God through a social anxiety disorder and panic attacks and depression. So it was a tough deal there, but ultimately used by our Lord for good. I'm married now to a lovely Catholic woman. We have 2 children, and I am a software developer, full-time professionally by day. I've done amateur lay apologetics for, on behalf of the Catholic faith for probably 10 years and written a few books that Catholic Answers have published, the most popular of which is called The Protestant's Dilemma. And it was, since I had a brief stint in Protestantism, it was geared at helping our Protestant brothers and sisters, enter the fullness of the truth. And that's it. Now I've got some other things that we'll talk about today, including blockchain, and I look forward to discussing all that with y'all.
Well, definitely, and that's why we're having you on, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. Talk about technology in the church, especially this Catholic blockchain. So, but first, Mac, in case there's someone who has never heard of you and doesn't know your podcast with your wife, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Mac Baren, and we are located in Georgia. My wife, Catherine, and I have been doing Catholic in a Small Town for 10 years, and we have a little side project called Spoiled, where we talk about movies particularly, but the Catholic in a Small Town, we talk about our life in general, and then what's entertaining us. We read from some mail, and then we bring it back around to the faith and sort of the intersection of our lives and our faith. So what did our children break that week that could bring us closer to the Lord? That's generally what we talk about.
Oh, very good, very good. It's an enjoyable podcast. I don't always catch every episode, but I definitely enjoy listening to it when I do.
Well, thank you.
And then Lynn, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself as well?
Most of you may remember me as the person behind the scenes of the predecessor to this podcast, Catholic Weekend, where at first I was just simply taking the notes, and then later on I ended up doing the blog posts and all of that, the social media stuff. So since then, once upon a time I used to work as an administrative assistant with a medium-sized Presbyterian church in downtown Durham, but since then I'm now working with a bunch of undergrads, a merit scholarship program undergrads at Duke University. So, so I'm not working with the church anymore. I'm still playing the organ from time to time, and if anyone needs a sub, I'm available.
Well, very good. Hey, get you up here once in a while.
Yeah, sure.
The miles might be a little bit expensive.
Yeah, there is that.
Well, I'll just introduce myself as well. I'm Father Cory Sticha. I'm priest from the Diocese of Great Falls Billings. I've been helping out with SQPN podcasts for about 4 years, I think, starting with Catholic Weekend. If you know me on a podcast, it's probably Secrets of Doctor Who. I'm on that with Jimmy Aiken and Dom Bentinelli, and we have a good time on that, talking about our favorite geek show. We enjoy that show. We're all fans of that show, so we enjoy talking about it. My day job is pastor as 3 parishes I'm primarily responsible for in the towns of Malta, Dodson, and Saco, Montana. And then I'm also pastor of a Indian reservation about 20 miles from here that has 3 more parishes, but I have a priest over there who helps out a lot with that. So it keeps me kind of busy, but I enjoy doing the podcasting as well, and that's why I enjoy being able to do this. Well, let's jump right into the topic. So, Devin, you mentioned the Catholic blockchain, and I think people hear the word blockchain and they're going to think, oh, this is some one of these new technology things. That's Bitcoin. First of all, what is blockchain? Let's just start right there.
Yeah, let's start at the basics. Great question. This has obviously started getting hype and news in the past year or so. So blockchain is a technology underpinning Bitcoin, and subsequent to Bitcoin now, several cryptocurrencies. Now, what this is, blockchain itself is what's called a distributed immutable ledger, which you can almost think about it like a public accounting, spreadsheet or list of transactions that have occurred. And this lives on thousands of computers around the world in a peer-to-peer network. So many of you are techie and understand that. That means there's no central server that has all this data and is the authority. Rather, every single one of these computers who participates in the network has an exact copy of all the transactions that have ever happened on this blockchain, let's say Bitcoin. And everyone then agrees that this is what the transactions are. Devon's secret address, sent Father Cory's different secret address to Bitcoin. So everyone knows that. This is what is the culmination of something that cryptographers and scientists have been trying for many years to do, and that is to make a digital currency that was trustless, meaning you don't have to trust the central authority, and would prevent what's called the double spend problem, where I send the same virtual, Bitcoin or dollar to Father Cory and to Mac, and to Lynn, and I just got triple use out of my one digital dollar. So through various cryptographic tricks, and that's why it's called cryptocurrency, not really that it's secret. In fact, it's not secret, and we'll get to that, I think. Mm-hmm. But instead that cryptography, the same cryptography we use that secures websites and 100 other things, is used to secure this network.
So it's you kind of uses the cryptography like a stamp to say that, like a serial number, if you will, like, a dollar bill has a serial number on it. Is it kind of like that?
Yeah, the trick is, the interesting thing ends up being that you can generate a very long thing called a private key, kind of a string of letters and numbers. And from that private key, you can actually generate many different shorter public keys, which are shorter strings of letters and numbers. And through cryptography, it's called asymmetric kind of validation. someone could look at your public key and know, yes, you are who you say you are. But they would not be able to actually reverse engineer and figure out what your private key is. So it allows you to basically sign transactions. It's the same thing on every web server. There's like a private key, and there's a certificate that says I'm www.google.com, and then people can verify, this is Google. This isn't someone spoofing Google that is going to steal all of my information if I put it in. So it's the same idea there.
Okay.
Well, what's the Catholic blockchain?
Oh, okay, yeah. So we can jump. Let's jump to Catholic blockchain since we're all Catholic, and then we can jump back and kind of cover maybe some middle ground. Well, so the first cryptocurrency was Bitcoin, and it was invented 9 years ago by a pseudonymous guy named Satoshi Nakamoto. No one knows who he is. He was certainly a cryptographer, and is a cryptographer. He's most likely still alive. But what happened was people realized, wait a second, Bitcoin is not the only application of having such a distributed public ledger that anyone could look at, like a public database. What if we did other things with it? What if we secured other types of assets or transactions with it? Maybe a real estate transaction, or maybe something where I have a digital collectible and I can verify that, I've got the number one Pokemon in the world. I own it because I have this secret key. Well, similarly, in the past 2 or 3 years, some guys, including a guy named Brantley Milligan, who runs a site called Church Pop that's owned by EWTN. Yeah. It's kind of like the Catholic BuzzFeed. You probably have all seen it. Yeah. He got into cryptocurrency, and he got me into it sort of reluctantly. And we thought, well, what applications could the blockchain use to support the Catholic Church's mission? And he thought up several ideas, and he's not the only one. Other people around the world, since there's so many of us Catholics, have also thought of ideas. And said, what if we could use this at the service of the church? And some of the ideas which we can dig into are for transparency of donations, for international remittance, which, paying across borders, it can be slow and expensive. To help people who are in need in other countries, like, let's say, Venezuela, that has hyperinflation going on and the socialist dictator in charge. And one idea we had, too, was a sacramental registry. So you think about the sacraments. The sacraments are immutable, meaning they happen and they leave an indelible mark on you, and it can't be changed. Well, and now think about all the rigmarole you have to go through when you want to prove that you can be a godparent, and have the secretary go fish out the baptism and confirmation certificate and have the church say, yes, according to this code, he is in good standing. Mail that over to the other secretary, the other parish, right? Versus, what if you could verify, actually very easily, that someone is who they say they are, and they have some sacramental prerequisites. Let's say for confirmation, or that this person is a priest, right? You think about priests who are fake priests and impersonate them, saying, "Oh yeah, I got ordained in some other country." So that's the type of application where, well, either the Vatican could have a central database that we could all tie into, which that the church is never going to do that because it's just not that well organized, and it would also be a central point of attack, right? That central database, or that could be distributed across on this ledger. So CatholicBlockchain.org, that's our website. CatholicBlockchain.org, all we are seeking to do is, how could we use blockchain technology and bring it to the service of the church, just like 25 years ago people started using the internet at the service of the church, or radio or TV decades ago.
Oh, very good. The question I have, obvious question is, like you mentioned the records and things like that, and I guess how would you address the idea? Again, I'm a pastor and I'm a busy priest, and I've got all these things. Is this just another thing that I need to add on?
Right. Yeah, and that's a very good question. One of the goals that we have with this, and I've started prototyping it, would be, I'm familiar with some of the parish software packages that are used across many of the parishes. Many of them are not very good.
No.
But
I'm sorry. I'm going to be honest. No, they're not.
They're not. Actually, at one point a friend said, Devin, why don't you and I work on making a better parish management software? I said, that's a really needed thing, but it's not something I don't know if I want to do. But what we
that would be a huge job.
It would be. So instead we thought, well, what we can do is tie into those existing packages such that when something does get recorded, essentially behind the scenes, it's also recording this on the Catholic blockchain. And
so there's no plug-in for all those various applications.
Exactly. A plug-in, a client library, so that it's pretty seamless. Now, obviously, there would end up being some work involved to query this, and there's also the question of how to preserve the privacy of those records. The interesting thing about that is there's already different blockchains that have solved the problem of how do you store something on a public blockchain while retaining anonymity of the data. And there's ways of doing that with certain hashes where you don't actually know who this person is. You don't know anything about them. One in particular that I use is called the Brave browser.
Oh, yes.
Now, the Brave browser is a cryptocurrency project. The Brave browser itself is a web browser built on the Chromium engine, which is the open source part of Chrome. Mm-hmm. But what it does is, it's very clever. It cuts out the middleman of advertising. Because right now, Google and Facebook, they gather all your information. They sell it to advertisers. They know everything about you. Right.
Yeah. Old
surprise,
news.
Surprise, right? Brave browser, what it does is, the advertisement that you then are watching whenever you're going to a website in Brave, behind the scenes then, for looking at that ad, you get paid BAT tokens, which is called a basic attention token. It's a cryptocurrency token. It goes into your little account, and then whenever you're on YouTube or your favorite website, and that person's enabled as a Brave publisher, he gets paid behind the scenes based on how long you're spending on his site, BAT tokens. BAT tokens can currently be sold for about 30 cents per BAT token, and so you've just effectively cut out that middleman who's stealing all of your information and selling it to people. Instead, you've cut out that middleman, and you have this very frictionless, loop of advertiser, we as the consumer, and then the content producer.
Okay, I have like a bajillion questions. Really, two. I have two questions. So the medical industry has not published, I don't know what you call it, but the last 10 years for them has been this big titanic shift, right, toward putting all their information on online records. So are they using like a blockchain in order to create a level of anonymity or to be able to quickly move the information from, say, doctor to doctor or clinic to clinic? Are they doing something similar to this?
So most of those big health companies are not. It was a big enough move to the cloud, let's say, and actually a lot of my friends work at one, it's called Athena Health. It's one of these big web app companies that run hospitals. That itself was an improvement over the old style of doing things. Some of the more progressive ones are looking at blockchain, but there's many blockchain startups who are seeking to bring medical records to the blockchain to do just what you have said. So they're trying to disrupt these other healthcare record companies. And this is what you just said this is going on in any industry or area you can think of. In supply chain management, in trying to verify that a product is legitimate, or tracking produce or meat from the source all the way to the end, right? There's all these different applications where you want to trace something and know what's happened or verify some sort of identity and records. That is now, people are trying to make blockchain applications for them. And so now if you went to coinmarketcap.com, that's like a popular site for looking at cryptocurrency prices, there's over 10,000 now cryptocurrencies in every industry you can think of. Most of them are very nascent. 95% of them will crash and burn and fail, just like 90% of internet companies back in the day during the dot-com bubble are no longer with us, right? But some of them will win, like Microsoft, Facebook, and Google did.
All right, so let's go back to on the parish level. So Father Cory's secretary, Sister Writes a Lot, is preparing for somebody's baptism, and somebody's boob Uncle Johnny is going to be their godfather. And they show up in the parish office, and they say, he's a great godfather. Okay, how is this applicable? What does Sister Writes a Lot do in order to figure this out?
Yeah, assuming sort of an ideal world where the critical mass of people's sacramental records are on a blockchain, so spot me that big if.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sister Writes a Lot would also be able to read, using the parish software from the blockchain, basically get his identity or identification that she could use to query and say, sure enough, he has been baptized, confirmed, at this such and such parish at such and such year. He has taken the baptism class.
But does he give her his private number, or
right? That's an open question. How would you accurately and uniquely identify a person on this blockchain? Right. That has not been answered yet. Would that be based on certain, his social security number? Would it be based on some other type of information that would hash to it? So there's a lot of open questions with how this could be done. But yes, something like that. We've somehow figured out how to identify him, and then we can look him up. And maybe it's one of these things where, like this, the police look you up and they're like, it brings up with fuzzy logic the 5 matches. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a, Devin, there's a father, there's a Father Johnny Sticha, and there's a Father Cory Rocha. We get all of these, and we kind of look and say who we're going to match here. But it would have all that information, and then they could say, well, I'm sorry, it's been 5 years since you took the baptism class. You're going to have to do a refresher, or whatever.
Well, we got to be talking about a lot of data, though. I mean, we're not talking about just a simple little parish database with 10,000 families and 50,000 records. We're talking about church in the diocese, church in the United States, let's say, just on a local level, if you will.
Sure. Okay. The U.S. We got 300 million people at the last census, right? Probably closer to 312. Okay. So let's be very generous and say a fifth of those are practicing Catholics, right? Lynn, you do that math. I don't know what that is. So a fifth of like 312 is what? You're looking at 75. Let's say 75 million people. You're looking at a database that could potentially have 75 million people's information in it, right?
That's right. And what's interesting is for a regular database, that's actually not something that's very daunting. But for the blockchain, it is, because file storage on the blockchain is incredibly expensive. And it makes sense why, when you think that there's a copy of this database on every single computer that is running a node in this network. Every single one has to have a copy. And that means you can't actually store massive amounts of data on the blockchain. Instead, and you'll like this, you would store it on a different file system. Well, then you think, and then you would have a pointer on the blockchain, just store a little hash that points to that other, let's say, file system. Well, now there's a problem. Now you have another centralized file system. You've just pushed the problem back. But there are now, guess what, cryptocurrency projects that are distributed data storage and file systems. One is called the Interplanetary File System, IPFS, and people let they basically put up their computers, and they'll let you use hard drive space on their computer, and they get paid cryptocurrency tokens for doing so, and you're able to then store massive amounts of data, but also in a decentralized way. So, that's the problem that we want to have, though, that 60 million people are needing to use this system. We're a long, long way from that. You think about how slow moving the Catholic Church is with technology. This is a very future looking project in that regard.
When the EMP attack hits, we're all screwed. I'm just telling you, all you Bitcoin people are going to be running to my door, and I'm going to grab all the gold underneath my mattress here at number 1 Barron Plaza.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely recommend if you want the hedge, food storage ammunition, Bitcoin, gold, and you're set for the pre-apocalypse, anyways.
Bitcoin. How is Bitcoin? Seriously though, I'm being hyperbolic and silly, but really, like I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan, and anytime anyone calls about Bitcoin, he is just, I wouldn't touch that stuff with a 10-foot pole. Obviously, you feel very differently. You've been working deep within the weeds of this. So convince me, please, in like 2 minutes or less, that this is the real future.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a sort of a use case. And for us in the U.S. and for Dave Ramsey and Fox News and CNN, we're doing fine. Our currency hasn't hyperinflated. Don't buy Bitcoin. There's no need to, right? The U.S. dollar is still the worldwide standard. It's not the case in South Africa or Zimbabwe or Venezuela, where from the time the guy gets paid his 10 bolivars and takes it to the bank, it's worth 2 bolivars.
Golly.
It's awful, right? And for them, then cryptocurrency actually acts as a store of value. To us, it's crazy. The cryptocurrency in the past year went from 1,000 to 20,000. Now it's like 7,000. That's incredibly wild volatility. For them, they're like, hey, it's actually retained its value pretty decently.
Yeah.
How does he take his 10 bolivars and turn those into cryptocurrency?
And so that's a challenge right now. There are money changers who are what they would call fiat to Bitcoin or cryptocurrency gateways. In other words, there's people who will take take fiat, so like U.S. dollars or bolivars, and they'll turn it into cryptocurrency. What's interesting about it is, even though people are very poor in many parts of Latin America, relatively cheap Android phones are quite common. And since this is all software, there's all these mobile wallets where if you can basically do this exchange, and sure, you might lose some money in that transaction, you have now that money stored and accessible on your wallet. Then people have to do all kinds of tricks. They have to go to cross the border to Curacao, Colombia, and switch it for the cryptocurrency for a gift card, and then use that gift card to buy food or to buy things they need. So the use case I'm presenting here is not necessarily for us, even though I think that there's arguments to be made for us, rich Westerners too, in the U.S. But for people who are in these places, a cryptocurrency is a better way to transact and a better store of value. Gold would be a fine one too. Okay, the problem is, of course, gold is harder to carry around with you, to chop up into little pieces. And I will say this: I'm invested in one cryptocurrency that is digitizing and tokenizing gold. So instead of buying the gold, you buy a cryptocurrency token that represents 1 gram of gold in a vault in Singapore. So the best of both worlds.
So that's kind of going back to when paper currency first came out. It was still backed by gold. That's kind of funny.
Right.
Okay.
And some people think we're still on the gold standard. Of course, we've not been for a long time.
No, not since turn of the century, 1900s, I think, somewhere in there. Well, let's go ahead and take a break here.
Can I ask another
real
question?
quick? Oh, sure. One more.
So I thought when this all started, quote unquote, however many years ago, there was a bunch of, what is this mining thing? Like you mine for Bitcoin?
That's correct. Right. So this is I'll try to explain.
Father
this very
didn't realize
briefly.
he actually invited his old Uncle Pete onto the show, but
Yeah.
here I am.
You know
You
what?
got to
The
use
first
a computer?
Yeah.
Yeah, so here's what's curious about it. To secure the network, okay, there are certain computers that are called miners. And so the way new Bitcoin comes into existence is these mining computers, right now it's going on as we speak, race each other to solve a pointless cryptographic algorithm, okay? And they are all racing each other because, let's say, 20 transactions just happened with Bitcoin in the past 10 minutes. That's called a block of transactions. Should it be added to the blockchain, which is this immutable chain of blocks? Well, they're all trying to solve a pointless cryptographic problem. Whoever solves it first broadcasts it to all the peers in the network. They all agree, yes, you solved it. that computer who solved it gets the block reward. So gets minted 12.5 new Bitcoin, and that's deposited in their account. That block gets added to the blockchain, and those transactions are now immutably stored on the blockchain. That's called mining. It's how new Bitcoin is minted. Every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that's minted gets cut in half, and in 2140 or so, 100% of the Bitcoin will be mined.
Oh, pretty wild. So it gives them a little bit of incentive, and that's something I think if we are to do it in the church, we'll have to think about how do we do that.
Right. So in CatholicBlockchain.org, what we're saying is let's not make our own Catholic blockchain, just like we don't need our own Catholic internet or Catholic email protocol. Let's use an existing blockchain like Ethereum or Bitcoin. Let's use one that it's already secured by thousands of miners and computers around the world. And we'll just use that and build on top of it. Rather than build up our own one. We don't need to have our own one.
Oh, excellent. Well, now we really are going to take a little quick break here so I can kind of promote what we're doing here at SQPN. Of course, SQPN's been around for a while, but we're getting things rolling again. We've got some new podcasts that we're going. Of course, this is one of them. Let's Talk, getting this discussion going. Of course, interesting discussion about blockchain, but other things we hope we talk about in the future. But we've got other podcasts we've got started. Recently, we started releasing The Pilgrim Life, which is talking about doing the Santiago de Compostela pilgrimage. Very interesting pilgrimage. I know a lot of people have done, and maybe you all know as well. Don Bettinelli's been doing the StarQuest headlines, where every day he does a 2-minute list of headlines, kind of more on the geeky side, the Catholic side, things that we think our listeners would be interested in. So please do check that out. Of course, we've got our Secrets of Doctor Who that I'm on with Dom and Jimmy. And then for those who like movies and TV shows, we've got Secrets of Movie and TV. And this is just the start. We've got more podcasts planned coming out here in the next couple of months. So please do check out our site, sqpn.com, subscribe to our podcast. And of course, if you are listening to our podcast and you enjoy what you're hearing, do rate them on places like iTunes. That definitely does help us to get the exposure when people are browsing the list of podcasts on iTunes and other media. They do pay attention to those. So please do check those out. And of course, send us feedback as well. We always love hearing that. But we got lots going on, and we hope you will join us and listen in to more of our podcasts. Now, talking about blockchain, I'm kind of move over more to a more general question of, what is in the Catholic Church? We've had kind of a love-hate relationship with technology. Technology has been something we've used, but it seems like we're always kind of behind the curve, at least especially with computer technology, digital technology. So kind of open discussion of what is the use of technology in the spiritual life, in our religious life, because like I said, we're kind of behind the curve. I've joked that the missile producers, the Roman missile producers, they need to come out with an iPad case that looks like the Roman missile. So as I'm sitting up there celebrating Mass, I can have the iPad in there. Now, obviously, I wouldn't do that. I've done that traveling, but I wouldn't do that as a daily purpose. There's still a function and a need for actual physical books. But what are some ways that we can use digital technology in our spiritual lives to help our spiritual lives? I know, Devin, you've got one project you're involved in that is a great one, actually, with dealing with novenas.
Sure. Yeah, I'll kick it off. I do think that the application of technology in our spiritual lives is pretty limited. In the sense of, like you said, Father, there's still a place for books. There's still a place for no computers at all. In other words, our life ultimately, right, is with our Lord and with His church. So, at the end of the day, when you through prayer or through meditation, you don't need the computer for it, or you don't need the tech. And it is ironic that I say that, in that a lot of what I do is trying to promote technology usage, including this Novena app. So I think a good point of a limited way that can be useful. I have this Novena app, Pray, the Catholic Novena app. Its sole goal is to help people pray novenas. and to remind them to pray each day so that they complete the novenas. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback from it. A lot of people have used it. I've actually used it this morning with the Saint Anne novena because I made it because of the exact problem is I forget that I'm praying a novena, or I forget what day I'm on, and then I'll just sometimes give up, which then feels very bad. So this is, in my mind, the perfect example of a way technology can be used. Computers are really good about doing something automated every single day. For a novena, often you've got that standard intro prayer, and then the daily prayer changes, and then maybe a concluding prayer. Well, that's very easy for a computer, to do. So this Pray Novena app is something that I've got that's been working. What's interesting, we ran some statistics on it, and of people who start a novena with the app, 70% of them complete through day 9 of that novena, which was a much higher percentage than I thought would be the case. And that was basically our goal, to get new people praying novenas and to help people who pray novenas complete them. So I'm interested in what you all think about. Do we already have too much technology? Can it help a spiritual life?
Well, I've got a T-shirt that I got at the CNMC in Atlanta, and it says, "I'm not texting, I'm praying." It's from the My Parish app folks. And, I think it's kind of funny, as a priest, there's a lot of priests who, they don't carry their breviaries with them anymore. They use iBreviary, for all their prayers. They don't really use their books. And I can see both ways. I mean, it's nice when I'm traveling to be able to just pull out my iPhone, or not my Android phone, and pray the breviary, fulfill my obligation that way. But when I'm sitting in the chapel, it's much nicer to not have the phone on me, so I'm not being alerted about this emails, buy this, get this. Oh, here's something, Father, we need to have done now. That's turned off.
Yeah, and actually, I serve as a cantor at my parish, and what's really nice about using the technology in that respect, I have an app called hymnals. And so I don't have to carry my big, thick hymnal with me when I'm cantering, nor do I have to go flip through pages. I could just simply type in the number, and there's the hymn that comes up immediately. And then I could also make up a list. So instead of having to flip through a bunch of pages, I just simply make up a list using the app. And then I just go ahead and tap on the screen, and there's the next hymn coming up. So that, first of all, I don't have to carry like a couple of big books, and it's just all in one very convenient tablet. So I don't think you could have too much tech. And another thing too, one thing that my mom loves to do, she gets up in the morning and then she'll turn on her iPad, and then she will open up the Divine Office app. And so she usually listens then to, I think it's the Office of Readings and Morning Prayer, as she's doing her morning routine. So those are a couple of really good examples, I think, of how the tech is really helping out as far as Catholic spiritual life is concerned.
Well, I'm a little torn on it in that I know how distractible I am. And as you said, Father, it is not that you don't have a tremendous resource, is that you have all the other little tiny resources that have nothing to do, and in fact are the antithesis of your spiritual life. And if there was some way that you could set these to automatically turn off all other notifications without having to go through and do that, manually, then I think that's really the ideal that we're looking for. And not only that, but for us to take, I really think the healthiest way to look at these is the gateway drug to deeper spiritual meditation without the technology. And so the technology seems to have this almost magical psychological effect on us that gives us a little dopamine hit when we're using it for whatever. But if we could get ourselves out of that, if it can get me to pray the novena, that's fantastic. If it can get me to pray the novena with an actual book in my hand 6 months from now, that's the ideal world.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that very, very largely, because it is extremely distracting. And I'll be in adoration, and yeah, sure. Some people are using their phones to pray or to read or whatnot. And then, of course, though, someone's phone starts going off, right? Or it's beeping, beeping, beeping with the notifications. And like you said, that's actually the opposite. It's distracting. And the way that we write these mobile apps, we being computer programmers, is by trying to employ gamification techniques that will give you those dopamine rushes and little things, and will want you to keep coming back to it. We try to use it to encourage you to pray novena, but I actually agree. It would be better if you prayed that novena with a book or a prayer card, or ultimately memorized it, because then you're not going to have this, the glowing lights in front of you.
Well,
I don't know.
When you write the apps, is there a way that you can do that? I mean, is there a way that the app, when it opens, it asks for permission to turn off all other notifications? Is that possible?
I don't think that you could. I think it actually would be a great app if you could. You can write an app to run basically in offline mode, and I'll be honest, it's not straightforward always, but basically it will pull all the data right from the server, cache it locally, then you could go into airplane mode or something to shut off the other stuff. But device makers, if you think about it, Apple or Android would be loath to give you the permission to shut down or shut off every other app.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but however, they would not care, I'm guessing, and probably wouldn't be as thorough with looking at, I don't know, if your app had a reminder said, by the way, for the most affectation of this, or efficacy, whatever the word I'm looking for, is please go in airplane mode. And for those around you,
Yes, and you could do that, and that would actually be a really good thing for all of these apps to put in, because that is, you see someone with a phone on in adoration or at Mass, and your thought is, and heaven forbid a priest, Father Cory, even though you're using your breviary, and I'm thinking, what is Father doing with that phone at Mass?
Exactly. Well, and there's a sense, too, that a book is a permanent thing. When they print the lectionary, for example, it is the Word of God is changing that book. The Word of God is now a permanent part of that book. Whereas my iPad, I've got my iPad sitting right here doing the timer for this podcast. This is the same iPad I preach my homily off of. I do the notes and I put it on my iPad, to use it for the Mass. I've done that before when I've been traveling. It's a lot easier to just carry my iPad and, use the iBreviary to celebrate the Mass, on a temporary basis, but not a permanent thing. And I think that's something we recognize spiritually, is the fact that these books that we use for Mass, whether it is as a hand missal, as the missal I use to celebrate Mass, the lectionary, these are permanent things. The book of the gospel is venerated because it is a permanent thing that has the words of Jesus in it. It has the gospel. You're not going to hold up an iPad as the book of the gospels. And I hope a priest will never do that. If they do, they need to go spend some time in a monastery in prayer for a very long time, in my opinion. But...
Well, we keep bringing up the word indelible.
Yeah, indelible. Exactly. Yeah. It's never going to change. It's never going to be used. And there's also the risk with technology that they're not always used for the best of intentions, shall we say. The same iPad that I can use, again, to celebrate Mass is the same iPad I could use to watch videos that aren't quite so chaste, shall we say.
Yeah, and that's a good... one of the things I've got, guys, it's not really coming up on this topic, which is fine, but I have an online course, and it's to grow in purity. Let me say it that way. It's for Catholic men to grow in purity.
Sure.
And the good thing about it's been men from all over the world have been able to get this course and get some help on how to conquer this using the tremendous graces the Catholic Church offers to them, whereas they would not want to seek it out themselves, right? Or they wouldn't have they wouldn't want to share that with somebody. And so, it's an example of where technology has even made we have a little bit of an online group of support for each other. And again, that's something that's usually isolating. This allows someone to connect with another person, even virtually. Some of those have actually now met in person. I met some of the people in person, and it actually led also to me and a friend starting a group at our parish for purity for Catholic men. We actually just met yesterday, and that in-person meeting can't be replaced at all, in my opinion. But it's a lot harder. These groups don't exist everywhere. And so for men who don't have access, they live out in Montana, right? they have access to it through technology.
And that is a good point. I mean, we can definitely use technology for things like education, for support. But ultimately in the church, our goal is to get people to Christ and to bring people to worship him at Mass, to seek his forgiveness and his mercy in the sacrament of confession, to join together as a community, as the body of Christ. That's ultimately our goal. First of all, we're not a me and Jesus religion, and we're not just in the privacy of my house, I'm just going to talk about my faith and that's it. So that's
and this is tangential to that, but I don't think can be separated. And Father, I love what you said. It's not just me and Jesus. One of the things, and it's been big in our lives in the last, really always, but in the last year especially. Look, when I grew up, and I grew up a Protestant, Devon, just like you, in this tiny little podunk country Free Will Baptist church, all right? And I was related to 75% of the people there, and we had, 25 on a really packed Sunday. But after church, everybody stood around on the front lawn for 15, 20, 30 minutes just talking. And, I would just be pulling at my mom's dress saying, can we just go home? Blah, 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 blah. And they built community during that time. And my wife is not one of these people that wants to do that. And I remember when we first got married, that's what I wanted to do outside the church. And she's, come on, let's go home. And so that's what I did. And so I've been trained now to book it, shake hands with the priest if we're lucky, and then we're in the car. And, that's my own fault. But what it has done is it has handicapped our building of our own church network and network of, beloved friends within whatever parish we're in. So Devin, my challenge to you is, because I know you need another something to get into, is to go ahead and write an app that rewards people for doing the type of activity that I just mentioned.
Yeah, what's funny about that is there's certain blockchain projects that instead of going off proof of work, which is what mining is, they try to go off something called proof of caring, where someone would do an action, a philanthropic action, a generous action, and be rewarded somehow with some cryptocurrency token for that action that then they could use in some, way that would help to build the community. Whether these are going to work or not is an open question. But I do think what you guys are getting at with the fact is our faith is incarnational, right? Christ didn't stay up in heaven and say, do this to be saved, he became man. And we have to have that interaction. We've all seen the effects of technology, and it can be isolating, it can be alienating, and we have to combat against that. Right. So I think the ironic thing is that all this technology that we can use, the pendulum can also then swing back and say, man, it reminds us how much we need to be with each other, and that's the purpose.
Very good, very good, and like you said, ultimately it's all about getting together, So it's something I think we need as we continue to work on technology in the church. We need to figure out that balance. I don't ever see us going to the point we will never have books in the church. And of course, there's the idea, like you said, they're indelible. They're not going to go away as long as they're not burned or thrown in the trash. They're not going to go away. Unlike technology, that eventually this stuff is going to break.
Well, in speaking of how ephemeral it is, it's dependent upon having electricity. It's dependent upon the life cycle, the lifetime of each of these components, which is maybe 3 to 10 years. It's dependent upon the will of Apple or Google, or Amazon who decides you can have that electronic piece of data, and I don't want to take your book from you as Amazon has done before. And so that's a lot less of a permanent type of thing. Briefly you mentioned the My Parish app. Our parish started using that, and I was so excited about it. And then, as happens with a lot, they didn't actually do anything to add content to the app. And so there was nothing ever in the app. There were never any messages. There was never any events. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of like, come on, parish. And then I knew they thought this will be great. We're going to do the My Parish app, and it's going to automatically just make things better. And instead, it was nothing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if they're not inputting anything in it, then I mean, it's only as useful as what you put into it, right?
Right. Everybody's just going to keep using Facebook, just the Facebook group for the church or the parish.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a
static
Facebook
web
event
page that gets updated once a month or something.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, Father Cory, you're the first priest I've ever seen with a C++ book in the background.
I was a computer programmer before I was a seminarian. So
no way. What kind of programming did you do?
I started off in the Air Force. I was a Ada programmer. That was the big push in the early 90s in the government to go on to Ada. So I started out with that, and then I kind of transitioned more into server administration, Unix server administration, things like that. But I was trained by the Air Force as a computer programmer.
All right, Father Nerd Talk.
Yeah, you're old school.
Oh, yeah.
His first collar, actually, he used to have a set of collars. One of them, it just looked like a straight up and down white piece, and the other one had a 0. It was a white 0. So
yeah, exactly.
Depending on which day of the week it was.
It was your binary.
That's right.
Yeah. So on that note, I think we could kind of wrap this discussion up, and we can go on to our picks of the week. I hope everybody remembered to choose something. Lynn, you got something you want to promote or as a pick?
I actually have 2 because I couldn't decide which one. So should I just go ahead and do both of them?
Go for it.
All right. So, of course, this one probably doesn't need any further, I guess, help. But I just got this book on a friend's recommendation. It's Jennifer Fulwiler's One Beautiful Dream. So I just started reading it after I got it, and it's pretty good. It's one of those page turners. So, yeah, if you haven't bought this book yet, and most of my friends already have it, I was one of the later adopters, I guess you could say, then I totally recommend you get this book. And then the other thing, I'm so excited about this one. So, I'm going to be heading off to Charlotte, North Carolina on Friday. Well, actually, yeah, that's right, Friday morning. I'm going to be participating in the Southeastern Sacred Music Workshop. And so it's a workshop that's organized by the Church Music Association of America. And so this is where we'll be learning and singing Gregorian chant and polyphonic music. So I'm all excited about that.
Oh, that'll be a lot of fun. I've wanted to go to that workshop before, just never had the opportunity to. I'm kind of jealous.
Yeah, well, and since I got permission to take Friday off from work, I took advantage. So I was like, Very good. I'm looking forward to this.
Very good. Mac, what you got for us?
All right, so I don't remember if I mentioned it on our show. I know Greg and Jennifer have mentioned it, and Jennifer actually gave me credit for exposing her to it. But I have 4 boys, and 2 of them are still of an age where they enjoy sitting around doing stuff with me. And so this goes out to all the moms and dads out there that are trying to entertain their children during this last sort of breath of summer, hot, stagnant breath of summer. It's Egami, and that's Tapigamy, and it is a contemporary art form that was created by this. He's in San Francisco or San Diego artist named Danny Schiebel. And use masking tape, all right? And I think 1.5 inches, I think, is ideal. And you tear off a long strip, or you tear away a long strip, and then you kind of roll it up at like a 45-degree angle, and you create this long tube. And except you roll it in such a way that it's sticky on the outside. And then you tear that off. And so you have a tube. So it's really based on using tubes and all these creative ways. You flatten it out. You can roll them all into each other. You can create cones. And you create all of these crazy little, I'm showing one to the camera because this is a radio show. I thought that was ideal. But you can create just wonderful little things. And it doesn't matter if you don't have an artistic bone in your body like myself, or if, you're wonderful at creating stuff. You can, with like 3 or 4 very, very basic techniques, you can create amazing things. And if you Google it, you can find rooms full of cityscapes that this guy travels around at maker fairs and shows off this stuff. And then you can coat it in Mod Podge or some other medium that you want to, and it's no longer sticky. But it's a wonderful, cheap way. You can go to Home Depot and get 6 of these rolls for $10, and you're set for the next month of making tape-agami with your kids, and you can have a little contest, and before you know it, you've got spiders crawling, hanging off the table, and consuming other tape-agami creatures that his little brother has made, and it's an awful lot of fun. So that's my pick, tape-agami.
That does sound like fun. Pretty cool. Devin, what would you like to share?
Sure, I've saved tape-agami, by the way. That looks fun. I know my son and daughter would like it. And by the way, Lynn, Jen Fulweiler is a friend of mine. We go to the same parish. I see them just about every week or two.
Oh, very nice.
Cool. My wife has just sort of discovered her book. Not that one, but there's another book. Yeah.
Yeah, Something Other Than God, maybe her first one.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. So I would give a cryptocurrency one, and I mentioned the Brave browser, which I have no connection with, but I would recommend if you want to try to dip your toe in just using something that has cryptocurrency behind the scenes, go download the Brave browser and say to Google, I'm not going to give you my data for free anymore, and try that out, and then see what you think about it.
Excellent. I played with the Brave browser. It's a very interesting project. I played with it fairly early on. I haven't been playing with it recently, but maybe I need to pick it up again.
Make the switch, Father Cory.
Well, for my pick of the week, I'm gonna something that I'm doing right now. Like many people, I don't exactly have a friendship with exercise. I enjoy food way too much. I enjoy sitting around and not going and working out way too much. But I've always been concerned that I don't exercise. So one thing I'm doing, and people might have heard of this, it's a fairly well-known program. It's called Couch to 5K. Mm-hmm. It's a running program where you start out as a couch potato, which I pretty much was. And ideally, if you follow the program well, and of course you keep your body in halfway decent shape, you're not abusing yourself between training sessions, within about 2 months, you should be able to get to a 5K run, or at least a jog. You might not be able to do a full-on sprint for 5K, but you should be able to at least jog a 5-kilometer run. And so I'm just finished week 3 of it. It's a very difficult thing, but it's nice because it does time. So you start out, like the first week, you jog for 60 seconds and you walk for 90 seconds. And you repeat that 8 times, I think it was. And the next week it's, a longer run with a longer walk. And then a longer, and it keeps, those intervals keep growing. And you only do it 3 days a week. That's the other nice thing, is the actual workout part of it, the running part is only 3 days a week. So, which is better for your body. And then you try to, ideally, you also find some other exercise in between those days. I just do light walk, but other upper body exercise or whatever. So I think it's a good program to kind of get off the couch. Obviously, disclaimer: talk to your doctor, et cetera, et cetera. But it's I like it, and I'm hoping this time I can get through it and get to the point where I'm on a regular exercise regimen, which is the whole purpose of it, because we do need to take care of our bodies. It is a gift from God. We believe that the temple of the Holy Spirit is our bodies, and we're going to have our bodies for eternity. So we need to take care of them now.
Well, I'm contractually obligated to mention Jordan Pederson on every podcast that I'm a part of, and his books, 12 Rules for Life, available wherever books are sold, is one of the chapters is called "Treat Yourself as if you're someone. Treat yourself as if you're someone you're responsible for caring for. I'm probably butchering that. Mm-hmm. But deep within that chapter, he makes the point that at any moment in time, you're really dealing with three people. And that's who you are now and who you were 10 years ago and who you are 10 years from now. Mm. And although a lot of the stuff in that book is just like, well, duh, but no one reminds us of this. And like you said, taking care of yourself and starting to exercise, you're starting to realize that you're dealing with Father Cory 10 years from now. You know, and when I want the second bourbon of the night, I have to realize, do I like Mac 10 years from now that has the second bourbon? You know, right. And so it is real. That whole idea has been sort of a switch in my mind. That's really been helpful with things like going and exercising, because I'm going to have to deal with the 10 years from me now. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I haven't read that Jordan Pederson book yet. I've got it on my Kindle app, but I haven't actually sat down and read it. I've heard good things about it, though.
It's good stuff.
Well, very good. Well, we've reached the end of this episode. It was a great discussion. Devin, thank you very much for joining us. Glad you could join us. Where could people find you?
Oh, good question. I'm most active actually on a Telegram chat. It was a chat app with the Catholic blockchain. So you can go look for catholicblockchain.org, and we have a Telegram chat. My website is called heroicvirtuecreations.com, a long domain that I got long ago. So you can find me there if you just Google Devin Rose, and I occasionally write blog posts, and you can find the Pray mobile app and all that jazz.
Excellent. Mac, how about you? Where can people find you?
You can look up macandcatherine.com. You can go to catholicinasmalltown.com. You can subscribe to our podcast wherever you get podcasts. And I got a big project coming down the pike that I can't really talk about right now, but I guarantee you I'll be talking about it in the show later, Lord willing.
Teaser. Got a teaser here.
Yep.
Excellent. How about you, Lynn? Where can people hear what you have to say?
Well, nowadays I'm mostly on Facebook and Instagram. So on Instagram, you could easily find me at Lynn Francisco. Facebook, I think it might be Musical Chemist. I don't remember. So something like this. But also, too, I have 3 daily gospel reflections that are coming up on the CatholicMom.com site. And I think the first one of the 3 that I had written is going to be coming up sometime next month, because I think I remember having written one for August, one for September, and then another one for October. So you'll be able to see 3 of my gospel reflections over there.
Excellent. Look forward to checking those out.
Yeah.
And again, I'm Father Cory Sticha. You can find me on Facebook mostly. That if I'm on anything, it's Facebook, and it's Father Cory Sticha is my page. My website where I post my homilies is frcory.org. Like I said, I post my homilies there, so you can listen to those on Sunday. I don't know if they're the best, but they're out there. You can listen to them. All this information will be available in the show notes. We'll make sure we have links there so you can check that out. And again, check out our website at sqpn.com for all our podcasts, not just Let's Talk and the other podcasts we've got going now, but even the older podcasts that are still stored there you can go and listen to. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you again next week. God bless.
God bless everybody.